My husband slipped something in my drink. I pretended to be asleep. What I saw him do shocked me, but I waited for the perfect moment to strike. Hi, I'm Lauren. But before I tell you how it all began, let me know from which country you're watching from in the comments. It wasn't supposed to be like this. When I married Mark, I thought I knew him, I thought I trusted him. We had met in college, fallen in love slowly, the kind of love that felt like it could withstand anything. Or so I believed. Our life together seemed picture perfect from the outside. Our friends envied the ease between us, the vacations, the dinners, the laughter that filled our apartment on weekends. But perfect is often a mask, and behind his warm smile, there was a calculating side I never expected. It started subtly. The little inconsistencies, the half-truths, the sudden late nights that seemed innocent at first. I brushed them off, thinking I was overreacting or worse, imagining things. Mark was always careful, always precise. If he slipped, he covered his tracks so well that I doubted my own instincts. I had always trusted him completely, and that trust became my vulnerability. That evening started like any other Friday night. I had just returned from work, exhausted but ready to relax. Mark suggested we celebrate quietly, a small toast to our week. I poured a glass of wine, sat down on the couch and watched him move around the kitchen, humming a tune I used to find comforting. I sipped my drink, and within moments, a warm drowsiness began to creep in. At first I thought it was the wine, but then I saw the look on his face. It was too deliberate, too calculating. I didn't react. I couldn't. Instead, I laid down, feigning sleep, feeling the edges of consciousness fray as the drug took effect. He leaned over me, whispering words I couldn't quite catch, checking my pulse like someone had rehearsed this scenario 1,000 times. He thought I was helpless, that he had the upper hand, that I would be unaware of the betrayal until it was too late. But I had learned to read him over the years. I knew he had secrets, I knew he had weaknesses, and I knew exactly what I had to do. I let him believe I was out cold, my body slack, my mind seemingly fogged. All the while I was calculating, memorizing every movement, every choice he made. This wasn't impulsive revenge. It was carefully orchestrated. I had suspected infidelity for months, noticing messages he deleted too quickly, meetings he had to attend, and unexplained gifts he claimed were for work colleagues. But it wasn't just infidelity, I had discovered something far worse. He was siphoning money from my accounts, convincing me it was for investments, hiding debts, and secretly planning to leave me once he had secured enough to start a new life. That night he thought he had succeeded in taking control of both my body and my finances, but he was about to learn that underestimating me was his gravest mistake. As the sedative coursed through my system, I focused on his every move. I memorized his passwords, the way he arranged our documents, the location of our safety deposit box key. I could feel the anger simmering, but I stayed calm. I allowed the image of betrayal to burn into my mind, storing it like fuel for the moment I would reclaim everything that was mine. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he left the room, convinced I was asleep. I stayed still, letting my pulse settle, my breathing measured, waiting for the perfect window to strike. By the time I rose, he had already started to celebrate in the other room, unaware that his entire scheme was about to collapse. I smiled quietly to myself. He thought he was smart, but he had made one fatal error. He underestimated me. Once I was certain he was out of sight, I slipped out of the bedroom, careful not to disturb anything, my heart hammering in my chest. I needed time and I needed control. I wasn't going to confront him immediately. Impulsive revenge never satisfied me. No, this would be precise, cold, and utterly devastating, the kind that left no room for recovery. I had spent months gathering information, piecing together his financial misdeeds, recording his lies, and documenting every hidden betrayal. He thought he had been clever, moving money between accounts, creating fake receipts, and fabricating investments that never existed. What he didn't know was that I had been quietly monitoring every transaction, every email, every phone call, all under the guise of ignorance. He had assumed my trust would shield him from scrutiny. He had assumed my compliance. He had assumed he could manipulate me without consequences. That night, as he moved around the apartment, I began executing my plan. I accessed our shared accounts first, the ones he thought he controlled. I froze them, rerouted funds, and ensured that anything he tried to touch would be met with denial. Every credit card, every online payment, every transfer was now under my control. I smiled as I imagined his panic when he discovered he had nothing left, not a single dollar he could claim as his own. I also knew his pride would make him vulnerable. Mark always believed he could outsmart anyone, especially me. That arrogance was his undoing. While he reveled in what he thought was my incapacitation, I methodically secured our assets, saving every piece of evidence he would later wish I hadn't kept. Tax records, receipts, investment statements, all meticulously organized to demonstrate his deceit. The next morning I awoke early, still pretending that the sedative had left me groggy. I played the role of the naive, exhausted wife while sipping coffee in the kitchen, feigning vulnerability. That's when his first error became obvious. He tried to access our accounts only to find them frozen, redirected, and completely under my control. Confused, panicked, he fumbled with his devices, trying passwords he had thought were untraceable, only to encounter repeated failures. I didn't confront him immediately. Instead, I let the fear build. I wanted him to feel the creeping dread of powerlessness, the slow realization that every manipulation, every lie, every act of betrayal had been anticipated. By mid-morning, his anxiety had escalated to frantic calls and whispered threats. I answered his first call calmly, almost lazily, as if waking from a long night of sleep. "Lauren, what's happening?" "Valve. I can't." I cut him off, my voice deceptively gentle. "Oh, I thought you might have realized by now. It seems your investments are inaccessible." He froze. I could practically hear the blood drain from him. You can't." "I already have," I said softly, savoring the moment. "Everything you've been trying to control is under my management now. You underestimated me, Mark. And that was your mistake." The realization hit him in waves. Every plan he had executed, every deceitful move, every attempt to steal from me, had been documented and countered. I had anticipated his arrogance, and now it was his turn to learn humility. By the afternoon, I began subtly revealing the truth to his closest allies and colleagues. Carefully timed messages, documents shared, and hints dropped in conversation ensured that he would face not just my retaliation, but public embarrassment as well. Those who had once admired him now started questioning his integrity. Colleagues whispered. Friends hesitated. His carefully curated image began to unravel strand by strand. Meanwhile, I maintained a calm exterior at home. I didn't yell. I didn't demand explanations. I simply existed, letting him stew in the consequences of his own making. Every phone call, every panic-filled attempt to reach me only reinforced the point. He had thought he was untouchable. He had thought I was unaware. He had thought he could manipulate both me and our finances with impunity. He had been wrong. I allowed him a glimpse of defeat before striking fully. I arranged a meeting with his financial advisor, exposing the siphoning and mismanagement. I didn't need to exaggerate or lie. The records spoke for themselves. The advisor, shocked and dismayed, immediately put safeguards in place. Mark had lost access to all discretionary accounts, investments frozen or reassigned, and any attempt to bypass these controls would be flagged immediately. Sitting quietly in my office, I watched his image crumble. The man who had once been my confident, smiling husband now wandered through our shared spaces like a ghost, bewildered and fearful. And all the while I held the power. Every dollar, every account, every asset, under my control. By evening, I prepared for the final act. It wasn't vindictive screaming or a public confrontation. It was a revelation, a slow unmasking of the truth that left him powerless and humiliated. I set up a private meeting, ensuring our families would witness only his stunned silence, not mine. I laid out the evidence of his deception, the frozen accounts, the rerouted funds, and the careful documentation of every betrayal. His face paled, his voice faltered, and he realized too late that the person he had attempted to manipulate had been the architect of his downfall. The look on Mark's face was priceless. Shock, disbelief, and fear all wrestled across his features as he finally understood the magnitude of his mistake. He had believed that manipulating me, slipping something into my drink, controlling our finances behind my back, would give him the upper hand. But in that moment he realized that underestimating me had been his fatal error. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. Silence and truth carried the weight of my victory. For years I had been patient, carefully observing, noting his patterns, collecting evidence without ever revealing my awareness. Now every calculated step I had taken paid off. The sedative he had slipped into my drink, his attempt at control, had only given me the time to prepare. While he thought he had incapacitated me, I had been meticulously planning his downfall, ensuring that every betrayal he had committed would backfire spectacularly. He tried to speak, to argue, to regain control, but I held up the documents, bank statements, investment records, and meticulous notes showing every instance of deceit. "You really thought I wouldn't notice?" I asked quietly, letting my words hang like a verdict in the air. The humiliation he felt was compounded by the undeniable facts. He had been outsmarted completely and utterly. By now, the families and closest friends who had gathered to witness the private confrontation were watching silently. Whispers ran through the room as they absorbed the reality of the situation. Mark had crafted an image of a confident, successful man, but now that image was shattered. No amount of charm or excuses could mask the truth. And I didn't let him try. I let the facts speak, let the silence emphasize his defeat, and let the power I had regained resonate fully. Over the next several days, Mark attempted damage control, scrambling to repair relationships and convince people that the betrayal was a misunderstanding. But the evidence was irrefutable. Banks confirmed the account freezes, advisors verified the document authenticity, and the meticulous records I had kept proved every instance of financial manipulation. His lies fell apart piece by piece. Every attempt he made to manipulate or intimidate me failed. I didn't engage in petty arguments or rash confrontations. I simply maintained control. The true satisfaction came from watching him grapple with the consequences of his actions, realizing that every plan he had thought foolproof had been anticipated and dismantled. The man who had once believed he could control me, who had tried to drug me and betray my trust, was now powerless. My patience and strategy had allowed me to reclaim everything he had tried to steal. My dignity, my finances, and my sense of security. I didn't just get revenge, I regained my peace. Watching Mark struggle to regain even a fraction of the power he had lost, I felt an overwhelming sense of triumph. The man who had underestimated me, who had thought he could manipulate every aspect of our lives, learned the hard way that betrayal is a dangerous game when your opponent knows every move you're about to make. Looking back, I realized that revenge is most effective when it's subtle, precise, and executed with patience. There's no need for loud confrontations or dramatic explosions. Instead, it's the careful orchestration of consequences, the quiet observation, and the strategic timing that creates a result so satisfying it resonates long after the act itself. Mark's fall from the confident, controlling husband to a powerless, humbled man was the ultimate proof of that truth. From that day forward, I vowed never to underestimate myself or let anyone manipulate me again. I had learned that strength isn't always loud. It's deliberate, calculated, and unwavering. And while Mark's betrayal was painful, the outcome reminded me that resilience, intelligence, and patience are the ultimate weapons. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Sweet Revenge Unfolded for more.